You want to get on to your next part? Because I know there's going to be a little conversation here too, because I've been, I don't want to say evolving on this situation, but I've been kind of curious. When we talk about this, we talk about capitalism, we talk about socialism.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Would you give me?
Well,
I'm gonna give you. I don't know what to say because I don't know where I'm at on it.
Well, personally, I don't believe in capitalism, period. But Venezuela says we must end capitalism to save the planet, and I 100% agree with them. And I will tell you why I agree with them in a minute. But they called to end this in order to fight for climate change. And so I'm just going to read a snippet of this. The head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Venezuela, Jorge Arreaza, stressed on Tuesday that there needs to be a change to the capitalist model in order to stop the climate emergency facing the planet, a situation that he described as an environmental catastrophe. Other people that have echoed the problem with capitalism and the climate and how it's actually very much interrelated are people like Naomi Klein, who has talked about disaster capitalism, the profiting of natural disasters like things like hurricanes in Puerto Rico by the U.S. and by the elites using, of course, disaster capitalism. The article goes on to say the planet has been a victim of capitalist model and its patterns of consumption and production, its relationship with the modes of production associated with neoliberalism, and the financial kidnapping of the world order, he said. Furthermore, he blamed the United States for acting with profound irresponsibility by invigorating the global climate conflict through the emission of greenhouse gases and evading its performance in its climatic reality. The U.S. is one of the main actors in the global climate conflict, with an estimate of 15% of the emissions of greenhouse gases, and despite this, it intends to exclude itself from our common and collective policies. Let's not change the weather, let's change the system. Words with which he closed his statement at the COP25 in the capital of Spain, the epicenter of this environmental meeting. Greta Thunberg was there as well. This is important because a lot of people say that no ideology is perfect, and I 100% believe that. But capitalism inherently pits people against each other. That is like the basis of it. As long as you bring somebody down, you're going to be up and you're going to win. And so when you're competing for resources, whoever has the most resources, whoever hoards the most, exploits the most, wins. And so when there are limited resources and limited amounts of people and you're already competing for resources, the environment, of course, is the first to go. You're exploiting things like oil in order to be the one who most has control over oil. You're exploiting things like plastic for people, making profit off of that. We've completely stopped the invention of other products. Like there's hemp that we could be using. There are other windmills, energy,
Currents,
solar energy, so many things that we could be using, but people can't do that because capitalism forces people to in turn need cars, to in turn need to get to their jobs, to in turn rely on the production of oil, et cetera, et cetera. And he talks about how the United States doesn't take responsibility for it, and we don't. Donald Trump has made it worse by, completely
Bolsonaro
removing
effect.
everything. Of course, then there's Bolsonaro and people like that. And I 100% believe that capitalism influences the destruction of our environment, and the destruction of our environment, of course, influences more capitalism because then you're trying to compete with trying to save it, but you're not doing anything to fix the core problem.
Well, here's the argument I've been hearing lately, and about capitalism is okay as long as it's no crony capitalism. But I haven't been convinced
that. I disagree 100%.
I know I haven't been. And here's the thing: I'm not agreeing with these people too as well, because I told Johnny I think it's very important we get Caleb Maupin in here because he's a very socialist, but he's talked about when socialism comes to the United States. And first of all, it's already here. We already have social quasi-entities in our system. But it will be a unique type of socialism. There'll be boundaries. There'll be limits. There'll be floors so people won't be able to get hurt. So when a lot of these people talk about capitalism older people who've lived in a somewhat of a socialistic or communistic society where they've seen it fail, they sometimes praise capitalism because they think it's about choices. They think it's about competition.
Right.
But once again, what point does capitalism not fall to crony capitalism? Yeah, it might have worked at one time and brought a lot of people out of poverty, and with the FDR regulations and those floors and those ceilings, it might have thrived, but at what point does it not get away? At what point does it not become crony capitalism? And at what point do we stop seeing people end up in the streets for capital gain so other people can have money?
It's always going to end up there is the point. And also to your point about people coming from other countries thinking that capitalism is the answer. Those countries are things like socialism and capitalism or socialism and communism failed. If it wasn't really that, because a lot of the sanctions and the intervention that the United States and the Western Empire caused upon these countries, especially Latin America. A lot of Latin Americans, like I've spoken about before, are very suspect and almost hate the thought of socialism and communism.
And make no mistake, under unfeathered capitalism, the idea is to have a bunch of people poor so there can be a small amount to be rich, to hog those resources, to hoard those resources, to take that money. So in its sense, but once again, I'd like to hear more conversations. I'm trying to learn because I'm kind of curious to what system comes into play. And I'm going to reach out to some people and see if we can get Caleb Maupin to come talk to us about that, because he has a very unique aspect of where he's coming from, and he's a big socialist in a lot of ways. And I think a lot, when you talk about socialism, it's about sharing a lot of the resources, making sure we're lifting each other up. I think it sounds great.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand what actual socialism entails and what it would look like. That doesn't mean markets don't exist under a socialist system. People are under the impression that you wouldn't have a small business. That's not the case. You would have small businesses. In fact, you'd have many more small businesses because corporations wouldn't be taking them over, and that's the difference. It's a mistake that people make to say socialism is bad because there's no businesses. So
well, I think that we have to get to the next topic, but when it comes to choices, I don't want a choice about living in a box or living in a tent, and that's what capitalism leads us to.